medieval Europe, there was one product tanners, laundresses, and dyers couldn't work without. They didn't mine it. They didn't grow it. Every person produced it, daily. Armies never fought over it, but without it, workshops stood still, collected, barreled, bought in bulk. It was urine, not a joke, not an anecdote, a part of the urban economy. This liquid we flush today without thinking once fueled industrial production, medical diagnosis, and even the most secret alchemical experiments. How did human waste become such a vital resource? Who made money from it? And how did this substance lead to one of the first discoveries of modern chemistry? Real answers always start exactly where basic economics meets raw human ingenuity. Money doesn't smell, Europe's weirdest trade. Emperor Vespasian once told his son, who hated the tax on public toilets in ancient Rome, money doesn't smell. Rome taxed urine collection very systematically, because dyers and tanners bought it in such massive quantities. Any source of income was fair game. Profit was all that mattered. Centuries later, the principle held. Trade ledgers listed urine next to grain and raw wool. Not a household detail, a full accounting entry. Medieval towns installed public vats for their specific craft needs. Raw material collected centrally, aged, distributed to workshops. A real supply system, built into the city economy. The practical reason, as urine decomposes, it releases ammonia, a compound that cleans wool, softens hides, and sets dyes. An ordinary, everyday bodily fluid, suddenly and ingeniously turned into a vital, specialized craft tool. The medieval city didn't run on modesty, it ran on pure, cold, industrial efficiency. A substance judged purely by its function. Would it provide better quality or lower cost? If so, it went right into production. Not exotic, just simple economics. So, who controlled this entire flow? Could a single large barrel of this stuff actually match traditional luxury goods for pure profit? Drunk urine and the secret to royal silk. In 14th century London, a small barrel of collected urine cost 1 or 2 pence, which was quite a solid sum back then. That was enough to buy about 5 loaves of bread. For the poor people living in the crowded slums, selling their chamber pots wasn't strange at all. It was a very practical means of absolute survival. For tanners, urine was critical. A raw, fresh hide, stiff, greasy, and covered in messy tissue, absolutely had to become perfectly flexible. The ammonia effectively dissolved fats and pried open stubborn hair follicles, stripping the hide bare. It rendered the rigid fibers supple and pliable. Without this chemical assault, there was simply no way to transform raw skin into high-quality leather. For laundresses, urine was an alkaline solution. It dissolved ground in dirt, helped whiten fabrics. Washing wasn't just a small chore. It was a hard, deeply technical process. Powerful ammonia was the key that made it all work. For weavers and dyers, it was an essential fixative. Pre-treating those fibers helped the dye sink much deeper and stay much longer than ever before. There was even a belief, a drunk person's urine worked better. So in some towns, dyers hired people whose only job was to drink strong ale, and then supply that enhanced liquid for treating the most expensive and delicate silk on the market. This benefit had a cost. Most tanneries and laundries sat on the very edge of town, or stayed far downstream just to avoid that truly awful smell. For one simple reason, the thick, heavy stench of fermenting and heating the raw material. That overwhelming stench was the necessary price of the craft. So the collection was incredibly systematic. Workshops needed a steady, reliable supply. The city desperately needed what they made. That demand built the entire infrastructure: collection, storage, large-scale distribution. Over time, this material moved beyond peaceful crafts. From rotting organic waste, including urine, you got saltpeter, the key ingredient in gunpowder. What started as simple leather treatment and laundry eventually became high military technology. An ordinary household liquid, now directly linking small local workshops to the massive expanding armed might of modern states. But economics and war? Not the end. What happened when the same substance left the workshop and entered everyday life? In the home, the bathroom, on your skin. The Tudor smile. Why they washed with ammonia. But the story didn't stop with simple crafts and weapons. The strangest use of all was actually much closer to the human body than you'd expect. Literally. In Tudor England, urine was a common household product, a cosmetic for the same reason: ammonia. Diluted, it acted as a potent alkali. It dissolved stubborn grease. It dried out painful inflammation. It even lightened the skin. It was a face rinse for breakouts and pigmentation. For teeth, it acted as a primitive yet effective whitener. Ammonia really does break down plaque, lighten enamel. Chemically, it made sense. By our modern standards of comfort, that sounds quite extreme. Aged urine was also used constantly around the average house for cleaning metal pots and stubborn stains. It was an essential, all-purpose household chemical. It did the same job: dissolve, break down, and then degrease. This is key. The line between the body, the home, and the industrial workshop was much thinner than it is in the world today. The very same substance moved from industrial production to the household, from a vital economic resource to personal hygiene. It was not absurd, just the same basic logic of daily efficiency. If it works, you use it. It doesn't matter where it actually comes from. But as the uses multiplied, something became clear. This wasn't a strange habit. It was systematic knowledge of the human body's properties. And if the body was a chemical source, the next step was natural. It meant trying to read the body's internal state directly from those specific properties. Reading the flask, medieval doctors' main tool. Urine wasn't just for craftsmen. A doctor holding a glass flask to the light, one of the most famous images of medieval medicine. Uroscopy, diagnosis by looking at urine. It was once considered a serious medical tool. Color, clarity, sediment, even smell, all of it mattered. Detailed shade charts ranged from nearly clear to deep dark amber. Every single unique color was linked to a very specific health condition. Sometimes the doctor didn't even need to see the patient, just the flask. Today, that sounds naive, but in an age with no blood tests and no microscopes, it was an attempt to truly systematize clinical observation. An early form of clinical thinking. Urine became information, not just a substance. Doctors tried to read the complex inner world just like a written text. But here is the genuine paradox. This same stuff served crafts, medicine, and something else entirely unexpected. What if you evaporated it again and again? Not for a diagnosis, for gold. The Alchemist, who boiled 5,500 liters of urine. In 1669, Hamburg, alchemist Hennig Brand was convinced the formula for turning metal into gold was hidden in the human body. Searching for the philosopher's stone, he collected and evaporated about 5,500 liters of urine, months of work, dozens of vessels, near fanatical persistence. The process was brutal. Liquid slowly evaporated, thickened, darkened, turned into a sticky mass. The residue was baked, distilled, heated again. It was not a random test. It was a titanic effort, a borderline clinical obsession. And one day, in the dark lab, a glow. Not a flash, not a flame, a steady, cool light. That's how phosphorus was discovered, one of the first great finds of modern chemistry. Brand was looking for gold, a substance that could finally transform base metals. Instead, he found an element that glowed on its own, breaking every rule about matter. It was a truly symbolic moment, a definitive shift from ancient alchemical mystery toward the birth of modern experimental science. And what was the starting point? It was the most ordinary, yet chemically complex human fluid imaginable. What served crafts and medicine for centuries became the raw material for a discovery that changed chemistry, from the everyday to the laboratory, from mundane to scientific. But if urine was so useful, why did people stop talking about it as a resource? What changed in European cities? How did this system vanish almost without a trace? Why we stopped using our own waste? The final answer was simple, and entirely revolutionary. New industrial technology eventually made the entire ancient system unnecessary. Once chemists learned to produce ammonia industrially, dependence on home sources disappeared. Production became large-scale, controlled, standardized. What once needed city collection now came from a factory. New tanning methods, new dyeing techniques, modern urban sewage systems. All of it slowly pushed out the old practice. The city didn't change because it got morally cleaner. It changed because it was completely reorganized technologically. A substance in the economy, medicine, and early chemistry for centuries, pushed aside by progress. A system that worked for hundreds of years, faded away, almost silently. But the real lesson is bigger than the fact. Medieval Europe wasn't naive or irrational, it was brutally practical. People used whatever reality gave them. They didn't divide the world into decent and indecent. They divided it into what works and what doesn't. The irony? Brand didn't find gold, but he found phosphorus, the basis for fertilizer. Without it, we couldn't feed 8 billion people today. And we're still on that path. Today, scientists are developing ways to extract phosphorus from modern sewage, returning to the medieval logic of total use. So what do you think? Is our generation too squeamish? Or were our ancestors just that tough? Would you risk washing your face with a medieval tonic, knowing it actually works? Let us know in the comments. And subscribe. More strange stories from history are on the way.